Assalamu alaikum. We are here in SIA Conversations to take up a continuing effort to change the narrative of economics in Pakistan, to present a better narrative of economics in Pakistan. Um, and I'm very glad to see that today I've got fresh young faces, which are very important to have. So we've got a usual stalwart, Asad Shah Sahab, who's well known, who's done a lot of work, been with uh, Deloitte's, been with uh, the government, has been an interim minister as well, and has a lot of things to his credit, including writing very successfully in papers on the boards of many companies, etc. Then we got Ammara Durrani, who's been in many positions, including the UNDP and several NGOs, well-known development practitioner as well. Then we got Nohman Ishtiaq, who's been working with the Ministry of Finance and many other places, is very well known in terms of, has a very good grasp on the fiscal situation. Then you got Dr. Shazia Ghani. She's also a well-known economist. So I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion because we've got some fresh people. So, folks, we're going to discuss the current economic situation right now, beginning with the IMF program. So Asad Sahab, why don't you take the lead and tell us, since you've written about it too, how do you see the IMF program progressing, and how do you see the future, the next quarter that's coming and going forward, and this situation that has come to a kind of impasse where the fund is trying to talk about governance changes and talk about further tax changes. So can you give us your thoughts on that and we begin the discussion?
Yeah. Thank you, Nadeem, for continuing these discussions on economics. I think we do need some fresh ideas and thoughts on this. But I think even more important than ideas and thoughts is the implementation of those thoughts, which has really been lacking in our system. We talk about reforms. We have been talking about reforms for years and decades, but actually we are never serious about it. So same thing happens. I think IMF is, in my judgment, business as usual. We get into the IMF program every 3 years. And when we get into the IMF program, our growth slows down, poverty increases, of course, our risk of default goes down. The term used is that it helps us stabilization. That's what has happened since this program started about 1 year, 1.5 years ago. Pakistan's risk of default has definitely gone down. We are making our payments, external debt payments. There is improvement on our fiscal and current account deficits. Although recent numbers, the exports actually going down. Mainly the State Bank has been able to repay debts and improve external or exchange reserves, basically through buying the dollars from the market. So that's what has happened. The risk of default has gone down, but we know that numbers may be here or there, but the poverty has increased and unemployment has also increased significantly. This is probably first review of the program. Each review.
Second review,
right?
Second.
So each review, the team comes, there are discussions, there are disputes on numbers, there are disputes on tax collections, and the new thing this time, of course, the two major, I think. Yeah.
Let me ask you, Asad Sahab.
Yeah.
I understand. I've been in the IMF, as you know, for many years, and I've been to many countries. It is our program. The fiction that the IMF tells us it's our program. Yes, the IMF dictates conditions too, But I've seen people negotiate. Do we negotiate? Are we capable of negotiating?
It's obviously an valid question,
Mm.
but my
You've been in
concern is
negotiation.
my
You've been
concern. I have another question
in
within your question.
Mhm.
Are these programs, whether irrespective whether it is our program or IMF dictated program or IMF program, is this program solving our problem, whatever the program may be? We have
Yes.
had these programs for decades, but it only takes us. There is absolutely no doubt. It helps us streamline our current account and fiscal and current account deficits go down, but only for that period. As soon as the program finishes, we still have to pay $130 billion debt or $120 billion debt. So we are bankrupt again. So my fundamental problem with this kind of program is that it results in increase in poverty. It reduces our growth rate. It doesn't solve the. You see,
Okay.
the most fundamental thing.
The
What is the
problem.
problem of Pakistan's economy? We don't
Right.
have productivity. We are not competitive in this world. So, what is missing in the program, whether it is our program or IMF's program, is that we are not aiming to enhance our productivity so that we achieve sustainable growth beyond the program. That should be
Okay.
the focus.
Fair enough. Asad Sahab, let me bring in Nohman. Nohman, do you
Yes,
agree
sir.
with Asad Sahab? Do you think that uh, the program misses the point and that we've had 25 programs and we still don't know where we are going? And will we have the 26, 27, 28, 29, 30th program now?
It appears to me, based on the current policies and the way the economy is run, I personally am of the opinion that further IMF programs are looking quite likely.
Hmm.
Uh,
I agree.
we need to understand what are those important changes that need to be put in place in the country for us to get rid of the current policy quagmire, the current policy issues, for us to get rid of the IMF program. That's the answer in a very summarized or a brief manner.
You, Ammara Bibi, what's your headline?
Uh, sir, in response to your question about whether the program is working or not, for the supply side, which is IMF, it is working just fine. IMF is doing its job and it's doing its job well. The problem is on the demand side. And to your question, why are we not negotiating? My counter question is, what should we negotiate on? What are the propellants, domestic propellants, that Asad Saab is saying? Absolutely right. What's the substance or agenda for negotiation? Accounts are being managed. The fiduciary elements are being done. I mean, that's what the IMF is concerned with. So if it's just an account management exercise, we are there, as Asad Saab identified. But then what is there to negotiate? Negotiation, the question of negotiation arises when there is a national demand agenda. That demand agenda is missing. Have the provinces asked the finance ministry, what are you doing to take our inputs for the demand agenda before you go into negotiations? The question of negotiations will only arise when you have a well-sorted agenda to take to the table. There's no propellant.
Sorry, maybe Ammara Bibi, very clearly, one thing that I want to ask. How do you differentiate between demand and supply agenda? I just want to understand that.
I just want to give you one example, and I will take one more minute afterwards to respond to Nohman's anticipation, correct anticipation about continuation of IMF in Pakistan. A few months ago, you and I were together in a closed door meeting with the IMF Res Rep organized by our friend Ali Salman. And there also I raised the question mark for IMF to make details available on what IMF and the government of Pakistan are doing on the first ever resilience sustainability fund extension to Pakistan. Yeah, I'm just giving you one example. In my vision, that's a very, very concrete agenda based negotiation product, completely in line with Pakistan's current climate induced, sustainability induced challenges. This is the, and I know I was involved in discussions with the government when I was working with UNDP. I know how hard Pakistan lobbied to get the RST facility. IMF would keep rejecting it. IMF was not interested in giving to the RST facility to Pakistan. They had given it to Bangladesh. This time around, something fundamental changed. It is the geopolitics. It is the geopolitics which is going to keep IMF and Pakistan for the next 50, 60 years. So now that that reality is well established, what are we going to do to convert this program into an opportunity for our domestic agenda? One point agenda, sir, as far as I'm concerned. Convert the RST into a real, tangible instrument for the change that we want to see within Pakistan that Asad Saab is saying, that you are, passionate about. I know Nohman and I have worked on the sustainability issue together. Forget the larger program. I mean, you can critique it, we can hand wring about it, but let's just take up that one pillar. Talk to the IMF, talk to the government and say, hey, tell us what are you doing with it. Since the announcement, we don't know what the implementation framework is. We don't know what the disbursement framework is. We don't know whether there's a framework for its programming. I'll stop here.
Okay, Shazia baby, what's your headline?
Thank you so much, sir. I have always been here to learn and just as a student of economic policy making.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
just
So I will share some of the observations I have when I was in State Bank of Pakistan too, and then I briefly worked with the government also. So my humble understanding is that actually deep down in our heart, we are never, we are never supportive of IMF policies. We always take them as someone coming us to dictate us. For example, most of the government officials I ever had a chance to talk, their understanding about economies of 60s. They believe in lower interest rates. They believe in heavily subsidized credit availability. They believe in high tariff protection wall built for them so that local industry can make their own car. And when we end up into after every 3 to 4 years in a BOP crisis and we go to IMF and then when they tell us that, okay, you have to do these 5, 6, 7 things up front, we always take that medicine with resentment in our heart, and the and our reaction is like that, okay, this is going to kill our growth. But what kind of growth we were looking at, what kind of growth we were aiming at even before going to IMF? That growth that everybody else has left, that growth model which East Asia stopped, which Malaysia stopped, with Vietnam and Philippines even stopped, we still want to pursue that growth model. And that when we end up into heating up of economy, we go to IMF and eventually, surprisingly rather, I feel started the people blaming IMF for each and every bad. Don't we need reforms? Don't we need to liberalize our economy? Don't we need to do regulatory reforms? Don't we need to reduce the government's footprint into businesses? Do not we need a factor productivity? Don't we need people who have that kind of education which is demanded by industry? So, I mean, first we have to make up our mind what we want.
good points. Very good.
May
Yes,
I come
please
on
answer.
this? I think
Go Very good introduction. Go ahead.
Shazia is, I think, raised very good points. And I agree with her that we are not clear, obviously, what reforms we want.
And we are
And
rather happy that, okay, someone in the room who can we blame that, look at this gentleman, he or she is not letting me do this. Otherwise, I
I
was
will,
going to give you subsidized
I
credit.
will,
I was going to give you
okay,
zero rated,
Okay.
okay,
Nadeem,
okay.
electricity
I
prices.
got your point. But my perspective is that, okay, we don't have an agenda. We should have an agenda. How are we going to address this issue? But the problem is that genuinely, the IMF prescription is also not working. The IMF prescription, we have seen it, that every time IMF comes it is fine. They, on a big picture approach, they want us to reduce fiscal deficits. They want to, improve current account. I mean, balances. That's fine. But the issue is, how are we achieving it? What is the aim, the policy framework and the mannerism? That is very problematic. You see, we have to understand that all the nations which have achieved sustainable growth, at least all the emerging markets, including China, has achieved it through export-led growth, right? There is no other way. We cannot continue on consumption and import led growth. Now, how do you get the export led growth? There's only one way. We have to achieve productivity, innovation, and attract investment. Now, how can you get investment in this country when the tax rates today effectively are, when you include the tax on dividend, the direct tax rates is 65%. Who is going to invest in this economy? Then with indirect tax rate of 18%, how a formal, manufacturer can compete with informal economy who is not paying that 18%? So it's very simple. The countries like Ireland and many others actually have cut down rates. You see, we can only achieve sustainable growth if we develop entrepreneurship based on technology and innovation, and if we attract investment. We look at our investment rate. Why IMF is not worried about that? They are only worried about the fiscal deficit. The investment rate, has plunged to 14%, 13% of the GDP, and the GDP is very small. Also, the savings rate is also 13, 14%, and that entire saving is taken away by the government in the unproductive government expenditure. The IMF is not forcing, I mean, they put all other conditions, but they're not forcing government to cut the expenditure and allow or promote private sector through better regulation, through cutting the rates, tax rates, and cutting the interest rates. You see, unless and until we have a buoyant, innovative, technology-based private sector that is able to compete with the world, we cannot get exports. And if we
Good point.
don't have the exports, we will remain in the IMF program forever. So
Good
let's talk about specifics.
Kyun ji, Nohman Sahab, can you get specific? What is wrong with the IMF program and why can't we fix? That's why I said we have a negotiating position. I mean, for example, can we go with Iran, Pakistan and say to the IMF, hey, we are flying now. We don't need a program.
To my understanding, Uran program is more like targets for the 2035 or 2030. They're not really what are we going to do in order to reform our system.
So you mean they're targets without instruments?
Yes, that's what my understanding is. If I read Uran, it is about, those ambitions, those good things that they want to see happening.
Basically, Nohman, I want to go to Mars, but I don't have a spaceship.
Yes, and I don't have resources to go to Mars either. I don't have the people. I don't have the money. I don't have equipment, but I want to go there. I think that's the sort of Uran or Vision 2010 or Vision 2035 exercises that we have been doing. Coming back to the IMF program, now I've just read the statement by the staff, the second review statement, and at the end, the very last, second last paragraph, it says the IMF team, which has, to my understanding, already left. The IMF team and the authorities will continue policy discussions with a view to settling any outstanding issues. Now, reading between the lines, can I say that there are still some outstanding issues? That's point number one. Point number two is that if you read the statement, they talk about the fact that Pakistan needs to continue, as also our colleagues have said, on fiscal consolidation efforts. That's one. To maintain tight monetary policy. That's what the statement says. Number three, it says regular tariff adjustments for energy sector. Number four, this is interesting. They say reduce footprint of the state, and they call it structural reforms. Then number five, they talk about governance and transparency. Number six, they talk about business environment. I think they are probably looking at cost of doing business or something equivalent. And then I think there are two more things. Liberalize commodity markets. And lastly, I think one of our colleagues also talked about the Resilience and Sustainability Trust Fund, through which Pakistan is likely to get or has already received more than $1 billion on the climate change related elements. So these are 6 or 7 points that they have mentioned, and they haven't mentioned anything about exchange rate. They haven't talked anything about import controls, the tariffs on the import side, the usual things. But I think my main question is, where are we on this second review? Has staff level agreement been reached, or will it be reached in the future? What are the issues that are still outstanding according to the statement, which have not been specified clearly? My understanding is those outstanding elements, before I stop, those outstanding elements are likely to be the FBR tax revenue. Maybe they want new taxes. Maybe there is an outstanding issue related to currency. Maybe they're looking at further devaluation. Maybe the outstanding matters relate to tariff adjustments on the energy side. Perhaps these are the sort of 3 or 4 key areas that may remain outstanding. So these 2 points, just to start the discussion.
I think that's very important. You're absolutely right. These areas are outstanding. And the IMF always focuses on, as Asad also said, focuses on fiscal adjustment and the current account adjustment. But they tend to, contrary to economic thinking and contrary to their own thinking, they tend to focus on the current situation. They want to solve next quarter's problem without thinking about, although they do a debt sustainability analysis, but as we know in economics, it has to be forward-looking. Are they talking about a comprehensive adjustment that's forward-looking, that will increase exports, that will allow current account adjustment to happen through export increase, as Ammara said, through a demand side thing, not a supply side thing. Sorry, through a supply side thing and not only a demand side thing. What they try to do is curb domestic demand and without increasing domestic supplies. Asad said that, investment is very low. And IMF has said, this entire statement that you were reading and that I'm looking at too, there is no mention of investment at all. And they're talking about, there's some mention of reducing the footprint of the government and strengthening governance and transparency and etc., business environment. But let's face it, the IMF says nothing on expenditures. If you look at it, we hardly seem to be an austerity government. The government is spending money left, right, and center. We've created, as I thought, I've looked at it, we've created something like 26 new agencies in the last year. They're creating agencies everywhere. Right now, we've created another agency, I forget now, but they've created another agency For God knows doing what. Yeah, sorry. They've created a crypto wallet agency. What the hell do you need an agency for crypto wallets? I mean, crypto wallets is something that I can get in 5 seconds. They've created an agency for this thing. Then at the same time, as you can see, all the provincial governments are spending money like mad. PSTP is going up rather than going down. In fact, if I was leading the IMF, I would cut the PSTP down to nothing. If we are in a deep debt problem and deep difficulty, we have to have something. Then, as Asad says, there is no productivity. So, productivity discussion. So, let's talk about it. Ammara Bibi, quickly, your thoughts, then we move on.
Thank you, sir. IMF, for me, is Pakistan's savior. It refuses to behave like Pakistani banks who refuse to invest in Pakistan and would rather park their capital offshore and live on its rentier earnings. I am very grateful to IMF for giving Pakistan the liquidity it needs to keep the business of government running. Okay, so we want to build a rocket ship, as Nohman says. We have got the money from IMF. I'm sorry, Nohman, we got the money. We've got the money. We went with a begging bowl. We said, hey, we've got these big plans and visions and dreams. We just don't have liquidity. Give us liquidity. We got the money. It is not IMF's job to make our economy for us. I'm sorry, Nadeem Saab, it is a lender. It's a Shylock. Shylock's job is not to help Ammara develop her vision and implement it. Shylock's job is to give money to me. Because I say, hey, Shylock, I need money for my vision.
Sure.
We are not building the rocket ship, Nohman, with the money we've got. 1 + 1 + 2. 2 is the RST that we were begging for and we finally got it. What are we doing with it? What do we do with the money that we get? So I'm sorry, I'm very grateful to IMF. As a matter of fact, I am shocked that IMF is stepping in the business of the governance of Pakistan. If I was working for IMF, I would have said, hey, are you in your senses? Why are you getting in this nonsense of the Federal Fiscal Pact? Why do you want to fix Pakistan's governance? That's not your job. Stick to your accounts. Hold Pakistani government accountable for the correct expenditure for which you've given the money to Pakistan. As a matter of fact, I would say you don't do this in any other country. Why are you doing this in Pakistan? You really want to get into the unsolvable mess? Looks like Washington is thinking, yeah, we really need to get into the unsolvable mess of Pakistan because we have learned nothing from Afghanistan. We've learned nothing from this nation building, obsession of building nations that don't want to be built. So I'm sorry, the issue is not IMF in my respectful, view, Nadeem Saab. The issue is the demand side. You've got the money. What are you doing with it?
Okay. Shazia Bibi.
Well, sir, I will be quick. I mean, whose responsibility is to have a very sustainable, some decent living, some good jobs, some decent standard of living for a country? It's country's own responsibility. It's our own responsibility. Until or unless we take interest into that, this is the easiest job to go to IMF to fetch couple of billion of dollars to manage your day-to-day things and then say, hey, it was IMF who has not let me do this. So, the kind of people we have in public sector, the private sector is not very much different. What's my private sector's vision about growth and productivity is? So I'm good in textile, but then I choose to be a real estate developer as well. I want to be in media also. I do not want to expand internationally, cause for that I have to bring a CEO who is not my son-in-law. I have to bring a person who is not my son. I have to make some excellent boards so that I can get registered on some kind of stock market. To get the kind of investment we need for growth, that's not just coming from the banking sector only. There are non-bank equity investments are also, but to do all that, we have to fix certain things that I'm not willing to do. as a business person. So it's very easy for me. I do not want to take all those hard steps. I do not, as an individual, I do not want to work very hard. I am just very happy in my 17 scale government teaching job. Nobody is asking me. I will be having pension. I have not seen any other country, doing all this and still growing and still becoming an emerging market economy. So
Good
I
point.
believe IMF is a small part into this. It's very romantic to say that we are into 25, 26 programs with the IMF, and it is the IMF who have not led us to grow.
No, I don't think anybody is saying that. No, I think
No,
let's be very clear. Nobody is blaming the IMF, but the
Yeah.
point is,
So it's our
countries.
own responsibility also.
No,
The
hang on,
point Shah Saab has
Shazia,
mentioned,
Shazia,
that's
the
very
point.
no,
important,
but my
about
Nadeem
the
sir,
investment,
Second.
about on
Can
the
I,
tax. I completely agree with him. The
come
effective
in
tax
for a second?
rate is
Shazia
like
baby,
above
Shazia baby.
60%.
My
Nobody
point is
would
very
like to
simple.
come and invest in this country. So that's why it's really important that instead
Please,
of, focusing on giving
Shazia
some
baby,
subsidies or
nobody
some
is
any
blaming the.
kind of, sorry.
It is not a question of blaming the IMF. It is a question of finding the right
Yeah,
policies.
yeah,
So the
yeah,
debate
yeah,
would be wrong if we go into blaming somebody. If you want to blame anybody, it's a government. In
yeah.
fact, quite frankly, maybe a government should not go to the IMF and think about it, or go to the IMF with a proper plan. Unfortunately, we
Yes.
don't have a plan. But hang on. Now here
But sir,
is where,
then there
here,
are
hang on,
some genuine issues
Shazia,
also.
Shazia, hang on. Listen to the other person first. Uh,
I'm sorry.
so
I
the
got
point is,
slow internet.
here is where I blame the economics profession. Here is where I blame the thinkers of Pakistan. Why are we not putting forward ideas that will inform the government as well as the IMF? So this is where I want to come to. Asad Saab, what is it that we should do to get out of this mess? I'm not talking about the IMF. IMF is part of the issue, but the point is to get into a sustainable growth path and a sustainable debt policy. How can we do this? Or can't we do this? Are we intellectually bankrupt?
Nadeem Saab, as somebody said, I think it was Ronald Reagan who said that the answers to our nation's problems are simple, but not easy. You know, and that simple solution is basically our government. I mean, in this discussion, there is absolutely no doubt. Nobody's blaming IMF regarding our inefficiencies and corruption and flawed policies and poor governance. All of that is our own. But where a little problem lies with the IMF or the World Bank or multilateral donors. I think we should also recognize that they are not just simple lenders like bankers. They are development bankers. And IMF is supposed to it's not only a lender, but it claims that when they come, they also bring in with conditionalities to reform our policies and our governance, right? So that we achieve sustainable growth. That is where it's not only, we are flawed, of course. Major blame is with us. But the thing is, our advisors, who give appearance that they are experts, they are also, their advice is also, I'm sorry to say, is flawed because they refuse to see the obvious. So what should we do? I mean, the answer is pretty simple. We have to take risks. We have to improve our government. I mean, it's easy to blame private sector. I agree, private sector is as pathetic as Shazia was saying. But you see, they are pathetic because we make them pathetic. Because our policy framework promotes cartels, they promote monopolies, they promote elite culture, they do not promote competition, they do not promote innovation, they don't promote productivity. So you see, the point is that you have to understand there are two fundamental factors. Look at any nation, how they have developed. One, you need to have good quality human capital, right? You need to have basic education. You need to have 21st century skills. So that is the job of the provincial governments, which they have miserably failed. Federal government's job is to create a policy framework that incentivizes productivity, that incentivizes innovation, that incentivizes capital formation and investment, that incentivizes savings, which they have miserably failed to do, irrespective of this government or the previous government. I mean,
No,
look
but
at
Asad Sahab, I would also
the
put it
figures.
Asad Sahab, I would also put it slightly differently.
Yeah.
I think, quite frankly, we don't know how to do it. I think the government also not to blame. We have all failed to enunciate policies that will make things work. IMF comes here, the mission comes here for 2 weeks. They stay in this arena. At best, they go to Karachi, Sheraton, or whatever. That's all. They discuss the state bank. They discuss with the thing. When I was in the IMF, I used to tell my people all the time, I go to a country for 2 weeks. I know nothing about the country. I rely mostly on on local research. I rely on local thinkers to give me ideas. Now, where are our ideas? So I want you to tell me, all of you, what would you, supposing you were the IMF mission chief, or supposing you were the finance minister today, what are the top 3 things that you'd like to do?
Are you asking me? That's a very.
Yeah.
I think you put me in a corner. The point is, it's not finance minister. I don't think alone can turn around the country. But you see, the finance minister or the prime minister, with collaboration of the provinces, they have to recognize that, first of all, the solutions or the approaches that we have adopted for years, for decades, they are not working. First of all, we have to recognize our mistake, right? Then we need to do the root cause analysis, why they are not working. It's not just the policies, it's also poor service delivery, poor governance, which or poor decision making on a day-to-day basis. Unless you have the right people, right teams and smart government, and obviously clearly with clear strategy. First of all, you need to know what you want to achieve. As I said, first of all, let's agree on the objectives. Do we want to promote business, or we want to kill the business? You see, if you want to promote business, bring in investment, then we have to cut the tax rates. We have to cut the regulations. I mean, look at all these economies. When they started growing, their tax rates used to be minimal. I mean, what we try to do is we impose the same regulations that are there in 50 trillion, 30 trillion economy. Whatever happens in US, we try to copy it as best practices, you see. I mean, look at, for instance, when this US started growing at one time in the early 20th century, till 1929 major crash, they did not even have the securities and this SECs. Till that time, there was no regulation at that time. So it was in that environment. And what was the tax rate at that time? We are actually 100 years behind. And these countries, which used to have tax rates of 40-50%, now these advanced countries, let me just complete, they have cut their tax rates. Now, US and all these European countries have 20% tax rates, and we have 50% tax rates. How will you get any investment?
Fair enough. So we got 3 important ideas here. Let's talk about them. One is, you said, simplify the tax regime, cut taxes, have lower taxes, live with lower taxes, The second thing is develop better regulation. In fact, cut the regulation, deregulate the economy, as Trump has done, as Reagan has done, as Maggie Thatcher did. We need to do these two things. We're probably 30 years too late in doing these things. The third thing is let's develop markets and let people develop a competitive environment. So I think these three things, I agree with you. Okay, let's move on. Ammara, what's your take on these three things, and what would you do different, or would you agree with these?
I'm afraid we are running a very, very high risk of persistently repeating ourselves.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All of this is dogma.
Mm-hmm.
In Pakistani media, in the forums, everywhere. Everybody agrees. Nobody is questioning these ideas. These are mainstream ideas now. Everybody says, yes, that's what we need.
Mm.
The issue is it's not happening. And that brings me to your core question, Nadeem Saab. Why is it not happening? Because you say, we are not doing anything about it. For me, as a non-governmental actor, as a non-IMF actor, that is a question. I have a grievance with the client, with the supply side, whether it's government, whether with IMF. What am I doing to take that grievance to them? We have to become tactical. Nadeem Saab, I've been a political worker my whole life. You don't swing political economy and you don't swing politics by waxing eloquent on visions. You do tactical moves. You may have a strategic framework, you may have a strategic vision, but you have to do tactical moves to put that strategic framework or that strategy into motion. I'm sorry, I haven't really followed his movements this week. Is the finance minister in Washington currently for the IMF World Bank fall meetings? Can somebody tell me? I don't know.
He will go. He will go. He has to go.
So, Nadeem Saab, why doesn't SIA, under your leadership, form a delegation, go to the finance minister and say, hey, finance minister, hey, Aurangzeb Saab, here are 10 points. Here are 10 points we want you to go and articulate in Washington, D.C.
What are those points? What I'm asking you, what are the points that we take to him?
I mean, well, Asad and Shazia and Nohman, they're all putting all those points here. The
Nohman,
question is, are we engaging? Are we engaging with Mahir? Are we engaging with Aurangzeb?
We'll come to that.
Ammara, may I just interrupt here? Look, I mean, frankly speaking, these are common sense points, and I disagree with Nadeem that we don't raise it. A lot of people have been raising it. These are a matter of common sense. But the thing is, our political mindset, our political class, they are in love with the status quo because they do not want to leave their status and their power. You see, what we are saying is it will require some difficult decisions like cutting the size of the government. Instead of increasing the agencies, reducing the agencies. I mean, you talked about three things on the federal government side, on the provincial government side also. The point is, huge resources have been spent on education and health, but have they increased our, learning outcomes? Has it reduced the number of out-of-school children? Has the investment in education improved, the quality of our education and skill development? The answer is no. And frankly, you may go on increasing the budgets. They will only appoint more teachers in the public sector. And our bureaucracy and systems have become such that they will never work. And for that, I think for federal government and provincial government, my suggestion is that you have to actually privatize education, privatize, health. And it is working. The models like Punjab Education Foundation and Sindh Education Foundation and public-private partnership in health in Sindh, the financing that they do to the hospitals like Indus and SIUT, etc., and NICVD, they are giving much better outcomes at much lower cost.
Great.
So
Yeah.
my suggestion is that we have to rethink our governance.
Okay, good.
We have to adopt this, because you see what happens is we are only interested in budgets. We are not interested in outcomes.
Good
And
point.
there is no transparency of reporting the outcomes.
Very
Nadeem
good
Saab,
point.
two fingers. Two fingers, Nadeem Saab.
Ji.
I have already given you a very, very important $1.5 billion worth agenda item, that is RST. Please focus on that. The second one that I'm going to give to you here, Asad Saab is saying right size government. We all agree with that. There's nothing, we don't disagree with these policy approaches. I sense from your forum, all the WhatsApp groups, and also the two wonderful articles that were written yesterday and today regarding the Planning Commission. Go and talk to the finance minister. Go and talk to Maher. Hey, this is the verdict by the demand side on Planning Commission. What are we doing to reform it or right size it? That's my second point.
May I respond to that?
Let Nohman come.
No, but एक मैं आपको information दे दूं ना कि आप कह रहे हैं कि वहां जाएं. देखें, I mean, the thing is, we just held a conference last month in Islamabad. ICAP organized a conference on public financial management, PFM, and it was on taxation and it was on SOEs, one of the big issue, huge losses that we have and poor outcomes. The finance minister was invited. Several other ministers were invited to listen to there were roundtables, the suggestions were developed. But you know what happens? They came, but they don't come to listen. They come to deliver speeches.
Good point.
Problem is, you think that, there's no advice to them? You think they are going to listen? Problem is, they think that they know everything.
So go to the army chief. Go to the army chief.
Ammara, I wish I could. Ammara, if you take me to the army chief.
How easy it is to go to the army chief.
The army chief. Look, first of all, let's be very clear. I can't see any official in this country. Forget the army chief. I can't even see the deputy commissioner. Deputy Commissioner Lahore won't speak to me. CDA chairman won't speak to me. Look, let's take a country, the spirit of a country properly. No official talks to you, and if he talks to you, he patronizes you, and he doesn't listen to you. If I go and see them, they'll come and give me a cup of tea and won't listen for a minute, and they'll go away. So let's be clear, this is not the way to do things. Nohman Saab, your 3 points, give me some good ideas. What do we do? Asad Saab's ideas, I agree with. I agree with them all, but the point is, how can we make them more specific? How can we take them forward? Nohman?
Sir, just reducing tax rates or saying that taxes are too high, they need to be reduced. If you look at only that element alone, maybe that wouldn't be sufficient. And I take Asad Saab's point that you also now need to look at your expenditure side as well on the fiscal. And otherwise, if you reduce your taxes now, without reducing your government expenditure, you need to, be very wary that, you're going to run into problems once again. We've got about 20 to 22% of GDP of the main government expenditure. We've got about 8 to 10% of probably arrear stocks. There are many liabilities in the system. You look at pension liabilities. You look at, for example, the SOEs and how much are they spending, etc., etc. It's a large expenditure. So I think perhaps one element needs to be, please recommend something, a comprehensive package that also looks at the next 6 or 12 months fiscal or financial issues that this country is likely to face. Where are we going to get the money for the gross financing needs, which are about $30 billion? So I think what we need to do is come up with a comprehensive plan, perhaps looking at different elements because there are trade-offs and there are synergies. I think another point that I want to make is that with regards to the debate on our own behavior, we note that as soon as IMF leaves, when IMF program is, working, you see some numbers changing here and there. As soon as IMF leaves, you can look at past 2025 programs. We go back to our old habits. We like fiscal and monetary handouts. We like protecting our currency. This is inbuilt in our DNA. This is who we are. Our parliament doesn't work. Parliament doesn't challenge the government on these fiscal and monetary handouts. The parliament doesn't actually talk much about currency other than protecting it or overvaluing it. Our laws don't work. We have a Fiscal Responsibility Act, but actually nobody's bothered about it. So I think the main question about us is why, whenever there is an IMF programs, numbers change, and whenever IMF leaves, we go back to our old habits. I think our system as a whole is not working with regards to these fundamental macroeconomic issues.
Shazia, maybe over to you.
Okay. So thank you so much, sir. I agree with Shah Saab. Yes, there is consensus that tax should be lower, tax system should be more efficient. Yes, there should be less regulation. But I'm sorry, I don't think so. The larger part of the society agreed on the role of markets. We don't want markets for commodity. We don't want markets for finance. Do we want markets for power? Do we want markets for gas? Do we want markets for foreign exchange? I don't think so. We agree on that. There is clearly difference. Okay, for example, let's talk about this wheat thing. Are 4 provinces agree on a markets for the wheat? Do we agree? No, we don't agree. Whatever that role of markets we have in our mind, probably it's very primitive. So that's the real problem is until or unless, and then one more important issue, that's my personal input that has nothing to do with IMF. I think we need some sort of population management policy also. We are growing at damn 2.6, 2.8% per annum. If we cannot grow like 5-6% GDP, at least meanwhile try to control this part. Otherwise, we'll keep on adding people to the poverty.
Bilkul. Well, folks, thank you very much. I think we've reached the end of our time. I think there's a lot more to discuss, but unfortunately, I've been told that our videos get too long, so I'm going to stop it here. But inshallah, we'll do it again within a week or two, because I think we need to continue this discussion. I've learned a lot, and quite frankly, I agree with Shah Sahab and all of you that we need to lower, simplify, get a better tax policy going. We need to deregulate the economy. And by the way, please don't forget that regulation was also built by the World Bank. The CCP, SCP, SECP, NEPRA, all these things were built by donors, and the donors forced us to build a regulation of the 21st century, while our economy is in the 20th century. As to markets, you're right, there's no consensus, but then, hey, the finance minister and the planning minister's job is to develop a consensus and lead the economy and not just yell Uran, Uran, and not just go to the IMF and lie at their feet. They have to have a program. They have to sell the program to the country. Unfortunately, the problem is all the finance ministers come in and think that all they need to do is, talk to the IMF, listen to the IMF, and just do what the IMF says. They don't have a policy of their own. And the Planning Commission and the Ministry of Finance are totally at odds. They don't discuss it with each other. And I don't think the finance minister even knows what Udan is. So I think there's a fundamental disconnect in the country, and the other ministers don't want to talk about the rest. For example, IMF talks about energy. But let me say it very clearly. The energy issue is not new. It's been around for 40 years. We've had 10 IMF programs when the energy issue was around. The IMF has not fixed the energy problem. The World Bank has not fixed the energy problem. Our country has not fixed the energy problem. And quite frankly, we are still bankrupt. We don't know what to do with it. We are trying to kind of swat flies in the program. We are trying to react to different problems. We've got a reactive mode. We have no plan to deal with the energy problem. Again, the planning minister should be leading it, but it can't because it doesn't know how to. So the problem is a deep, deep disconnect in the economy. Nobody knows what to do. They hold these meetings, and the meetings are unproductive. They just go on and on just for the sake of letting some ministers, sound off. But otherwise, the governance system, the policy-making system is totally dead. But I can't leave without saying, the fault is our economists too. When I look at the papers coming out of the economics profession, there are hardly any papers coming out in taxation. There are hardly anything sensible in taxation. Our profession has not developed. ICAP has not developed. At the same time, if you look at the regulatory structure, nobody talks about the regulatory structure. I did these 3 volumes on sludge, but I haven't seen anybody pick them up. I did the footprint of the economy, and I don't see anybody picking them up. So I think the problem is there's a deep disconnect in our profession, in our governance system everywhere. I keep trying to go to these WhatsApp groups where I've got a lot of economists, and I find they're incapable of discussing anything on economics. All they want to do is discuss their promotions and their graded jobs, and they think that they deserve a pensionable lifetime job, which is the problem in this country. If you can only discontinue pensionable lifetime jobs, if you can only continue perks and plots and protocol, etc., which are 19th century thing, not even 20th century, we have to begin to think anew. And I think it has to begin with us. That's why we are doing this, not with the government. Government is not going to change. And the IMF in 2 weeks, what the hell do they know? And Ammara, when you say go to Maher or whatever, I talk to these guys all the time. But why would they listen to me? They don't. They listen to the finance minister and they have got a thing going. They don't talk to anybody. They don't do anything else. The rest of us are out of it unless we develop a volume. This is what we are trying to do here. Thank you, folks. All the best. Bye-bye. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you.